Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the world joining us from. Welcome to today's event, Powering the Right to Food Through Capacity Development. This is FAO's new Right to Food e-learning course. My name is Claire Mason, and I work in the Right to Food team here at FAO. I will be your moderator for the next hour. We're so pleased to have you join us here from around the world as we explore how capacity development can strengthen efforts to realize the right to food through knowledge and collaboration. Before we dive into our discussion, I'm very happy to give the floor to Lauren Phillips, who is the Deputy Director for the Rural Transformation and Gender Equality Division here at FAO. This division houses the Right to Food team. Lauren will officially open this session on behalf of FAO. Over to you, Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you all for joining. I'm excited to see so many participants from across the world. I'd like to, again, welcome you all to this launch of our new e-learning course on the fundamentals of the right to food. The right to food and the right to adequate food is recognized under international law. But in practice, it remains one of the most neglected of the human rights. And with the intersecting challenges that we have in the world, like climate change, growing inequalities both between and within countries, instability and conflict across the world, realizing the right to food is more urgent than ever. So I want to welcome you today to this event, which is about two things, I think. The first, most simply, is launching this new tool. And secondly, to continue a broader conversation about making sure that the right to food is reflected in the important work that we all do. So the e-learning course that we're introducing is designed to help build understanding and practical knowledge around the right to food, and is aimed at a wide range of audiences. So that could be those of you who are already experts on this topic, have a very strong backing in human rights, or those that are completely new who want to deepen your engagement. And at the heart of it, it's about supporting capacity and capacity development, because we believe that with the right tools and knowledge, we can turn principles of the right to food into practice. Before I pass back to Claire, I would like to sort of take a moment to thank and acknowledge the generous support of the Spanish Agency for International Cooperation, who provided funding to help us make the course possible. And we're very proud to have the course be available through the FAO e-Learning Academy. We hope that it can serve as a catalyst for your understanding and your colleagues' understanding of the right to food, to enhance engagement so we can have that broader conversation that I mentioned, and lead to stronger policies at the national, subnational, local level, and more inclusive actions by a variety of stakeholders. So thank you again for being with us, and I hope that you enjoyed this rich conversation. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for setting the stage and reminding us of what's at stake when we talk about the right to food. So before we start, a little bit of audience participation. You're going to see a quick poll that will appear on the screen, I hope. This will ask where you're from, which geographical region you're coming from, or you're connecting from, as well as the type of institution you're affiliated to and your gender. So if you could please participate, this will be great to enable us to see where people are coming from. So you indicate the geographical region that you're connected from. You'll see here, poll 1. And then there should be a poll coming up now, which will ask you where or which your affiliation is from, whether you're a civil society organization, whether you're intergovernmental, whether you're from the United Nations, government, or other stakeholder. This kind of information is really helpful to us because it enables us to see who we're reaching out to and who we really need to target as well, or who we're missing. So if you could also please now fill in your gender. I think that poll is coming up. Or maybe you can see it. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. So with that done, It is my great pleasure to hand over to our keynote speaker today, Therese Arneson, who is Human Rights Officer at the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Therese will give us a global overview of where things stand today in relation to the realization of the right to food, the progress that has been made, and the challenges that remain. Therese, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. I'll be putting up my presentation as we speak. Greetings to everyone from the UN Human Rights Office in Geneva. A very big thanks to the FAO for inviting us and for the continued collaboration that we're having with your office. For us, obviously, capacity building on human rights and the right to food in particular is a very important part of our work. I'm very happy to be here today with other key stakeholders, German National Human Rights Institute and the civil society representatives with whom we work jointly to advance the realization of the right to food. And I'll be speaking today about the state of the right to food, and I'll be speaking a little bit about how we see the added value of using the right to food and a human rights-based approach as a tool to improve the current situation. So first of all, wanted to talk a little bit about where we are today. I think everyone that dials into this webinar is fully aware that we're hugely off track to meet SDG 2, along with many other important goals of the 2030 agenda. And Lauren already alluded to this in her introductory remarks, that there's a number of factors that are contributing to impeding the realization of the right to food. There's certainly large global events, including conflicts and the triple planetary crisis, economic downturns, and really at the key of this, persistent inequalities that drive food insecurity and malnutrition, as well as undernourishment, which has remained high for 3 consecutive years after rising sharply in the wake of COVID-19. Can you see well? Yeah.
The PowerPoint actually, so participants.
Is the PowerPoint frozen? Oh no.
Yeah, it's frozen. So if you could just
give us a second. Sorry about that.
Apologies, everyone.
Maybe if it's freezing too long at our end, maybe we can ask the organizers to put it up at their side. And otherwise, I'll go on talking and we can share this afterwards. Let us know, Claire, if we're not able to sort it out. It doesn't look like we're able to solve this at our end. Anna, do you want to try to put it up at your end? And I'll just go on talking.
Yes, we will try now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'll go on in the meantime to highlight some of the numbers that we wanted to showcase, and then the human rights-based approach to addressing this crisis. So as we were saying, since COVID-19, undernourishment has really been on the rise and it's remaining high. We see disparities among regions continuing to increase and undernourishment affecting 1 in 2 people in sub-Saharan Africa, 1 in 3 people in South Asia. And by 2030, we're projecting that 582 million people will be chronically undernourished. At the global level, we have 1 in 3 people, roughly 2.5 billion, who are not able to afford a healthy diet. And at the same time, we see food waste accounting for about 1/3 of all food globally. We see really a record high number of countries who are grappling with moderate to abnormal high food prices. And here again, the inequalities are very evident, with low-income countries having the largest percentage of their population that is not able to afford a healthy diet, which is at over 70%. At the same time, here we are with the slides. Thank you so much, colleagues. At the same time, parts of the international system and international cooperation has, through trade agreements and development projects at times, actually promoting industrial food production, which have again contributed to some of these inequalities, and I'll talk more about that later. So in 95% of the countries where we have available data, the average annual income of small-scale food producers is less than half of that of large-scale food producers. So what we really need to see is that decision makers take action to both address and to reverse these inequalities. And there are inequalities in wealth, in power, and there are also inequalities in terms of when we're talking about accessing, using, and controlling land, which is really key here, right? So while hunger primarily affects the poorest and the most marginalized, this isn't because principally there is a lack of food, but because there is a lack of the means to buy it or for the resources to grow it themselves. And as we still see the majority of the world's poor living in rural areas relying on agriculture for survival, we really need to see efforts to transform the global food production pattern, go hand in hand with policies that increase opportunities and livelihoods for small-scale farmers and fishers and rural communities. When we're talking about land, we know that in almost half of all countries, men are twice as likely to own agricultural land as women are. And these are really structural inequalities. They're not only related to land, they're also related to other resources that are required for subsistence farming, for food production, and this includes also access to finance. And women's land ownership here is linked to a series of other rights, and they're linked to positive performance in terms of livelihoods, income, nutrition, very likely, but even protection from gender-based violence. And this is really illustrating how interlinked all these rights are, right? So if you take measures to increase the equal enjoyment of the rights to food, access to and control over land, that way states can also contribute to close the productivity gap between farms that are managed by men and women respectively. If we look at the GDP, we have a 10% loss going to quantified hidden costs that include unhealthy diets. We see social inequalities, negative environmental impacts that are stemming from the current agri-food systems. And these hidden costs, they really include burdens of diet-related diseases, a lost productivity because of undernourishment, and poverty among agri-food system workers, as well as the costs that are arising from greenhouse gas emissions. And recovering this loss really needs a reorientation of existing food systems around and focused around the right to food, the right to clean, healthy, sustainable environment, the right to health, and the rights of those who actually feed us. And we'll get to more of that in my next slide. So my next slide is really just recapping a little bit what we said at the outset, some keywords, some buzzwords about what has contributed to or what are the key characterization of where we are today. And within this, we have not yet been specific talking about country examples, but we refer to conflict here. I want to make two examples. One is from Gaza, where we even see that food is being weaponized and being used for the means of starvation as a method of war. And then in Sudan, where we see that bombardments, attacks on markets, you have a breakdown of food distribution system and the loss of livelihoods that go all hand in hand, really contributing to the situation. And at the outset and at the key of these aspects is the lack of recognition and the protection, therefore, of the rights of those who produce our food. So we mentioned earlier, peasants and other workers in rural areas are really often among the poor and the hungriest, and they are very exploited in the current food systems that we see today. So we want to talk very briefly before I run out of time about what the right to food and the human rights-based approach to this means in practice. And you will see this come out very, very clearly from the e-learning course that the FAO has developed. You will see the international human rights framework, whereby if you apply this, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and Other Persons in Rural Areas, the UN Guiding Principles of Business and Human Rights when we talk about corporations, and really see how if you treat food as a right, that means that you will have policies that are targeted at fulfilling these rights. And by having this approach, you're actually focusing on people, you're putting That's what we call the human rights-based approach, a people-centered approach, and you put people and planet before profit. That would be kind of the paradigm shift that we're looking at here in terms of reversing the situation of the state of the food today. I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to remind everyone that the UN human rights mechanisms provide guidance to states about how to go about this change that we need. You have the Committee on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, who review countries and provide very targeted recommendations in terms of the legal framework, for example, on the right to food. And then you have the special procedures, mandates. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, who write thematic report to go very deep into food system transformation. He also addresses governments or corporations directly through communication. So these are tools that everyone can use, rights holders as well as duty bearers. And then finally, I just wanted to round this off by saying, really, for us, the Human Rights Office capacity building for us is really a means to enhance the enjoyment of the right to food. And we really truly believe that by increasing knowledge and awareness, increasing transparency and accountability, we will get better policy outcomes. I'll stop here, and I really look forward to today's discussion, and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Therese, for your comprehensive presentation on the state of the right to food, joining us from the OHCHR, the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights. Really excellent way of setting out the challenges that still lie in, unfortunately, today in relation to enjoyment of the right to adequate food for all. So building on this context and your emphasis of the importance of capacity building, I'm very happy to turn to one of our e-learning tools, which has been developed to address some of these very gaps. I'm very pleased here to introduce Ana Suarez-Dusan from our Right to Food team at FAO. She will present this new e-learning Right to Food course that we're launching today on the fundamentals of the right to food. This course is designed to equip a wide range of actors with the knowledge and skills needed to turn the right to food from principle into practice. Ana, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ana Suarez-Dusan, and I'm a human rights and right to food specialist at the Right to Food team at FAO. I'm very pleased to introduce today the new Right to Food e-learning, which is called Right to Food Fundamentals, that has been developed by the FAO Right to Food team with the support of the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation and the government of Germany. And this has also been a collaborative effort with OHCHR. Actually, Therese was one of our peer reviewers, along with the FAO's legal office. So over the next few minutes, I will walk you briefly through the background, the structure, and the key features of the course, and show you how to access and use it. So let me introduce you first to Paula. Paula is our virtual tutor on the course, and she's a right to food specialist at FAO. And she guides you through the learning journey. But before we dive into the course, I want to tell you why this course is needed now more than ever. So first, while the right to food is recognized by many national and international legal frameworks, implementation remains inconsistent. At the same time, as we heard from Therese, we are seeing rising levels of food insecurity, inequality, social exclusion, and conflicts, which are deepening the gap between the rights and the reality. There is also a lack of practical tools for applying the human rights-based approach and limited understanding of what really means the right to food. Many countries are also struggling with weak legal and policy implementation and integration of their own legal and policy frameworks, and there are insufficient accountability and monitoring mechanisms for addressing the realization of the right to food. So all these highlight a clear need for accessible, flexible learning tools that can build awareness, foster understanding, and support action. And this is exactly what this course aims to deliver. So who is this course for? This course is designed for anyone working to advance. Can you see my slides moving? Okay. So this course is designed for anyone working to advance change in agriculture, nutrition, food systems, or human rights, regardless of their background, but it's especially useful for UN staff and FAO colleagues, government representatives, members of parliament, ministry officials, civil society representatives, human rights defenders, the private sector, researchers, professors, students in academia, and consumers organizations. So you don't need to be a legal expert. If you are interested in the right to food, this course is for you. And what you will learn. So this course is structured to give learners a solid foundation, both of the theory and the practice of the right to food. So the course starts with the basics: what are the human rights, how they are protected internationally, what is the human rights-based approach, why it's important for food and nutrition issues. Then we look at how the right to food is how the right to human rights-based approach is a practical tool to realize the right to food. And the course covers the legal foundations of the right to food, including the international legal framework, and also explore the roles and responsibilities of different actors, including clarifying what are the obligations of the state actors. So in short, this course aims to move beyond abstract principles to show how this right can be realized in practice. So the course is structured in two parts. Part one is the human rights-based approach, and it takes about 1 hour and a half to take. It has 2 lessons. Introduction to the International Human Rights Framework, which explains what human rights are and how they have been developed, and set the stages to understand where the right to food fits into this large framework. And then we go into what is the human rights-based approach to development. Part 2 is now focused on the human right to adequate food, and it has 3 lessons. Lesson 1 provides an overview of what the right to adequate food is. Lesson 2 talks about the roles and responsibilities of different actors, and lesson 3 explore what the right to food guidelines are, which we celebrated 20 years ago last year, but how they remain relevant today. In total, this part takes about 2 hours and 50 minutes, and you can take the lessons at your own pace. You can do one today and the other one in 1 week. It doesn't matter. You can share. You can choose how to do it. Here, I just recorded a small demonstration of how the course looks like. So this is how the course looks like. This is part 1, the human rights-based approach, and here you need to click on access course, then accept the terms and conditions, and you have the welcome to this course with our tutor, Paula. Here on the right-hand side, you have the menu. First, you have information about the course, so who should take this course, a course tutorial of how to navigate the course structure, and then you have the 2 lessons. For example, if you go to lesson 1, for each lesson you have the welcome to the lesson with the learning objectives for each lesson. After a certain number of slides, let's say you have a quick recap with a quick test of what you have learned. And at the end of each lesson, you have the conclusion with the key takeaways from the lessons. Each lesson is full of practical examples and different links if you want to know more. Here, this is also very useful because here in acknowledgements, you have the references. And the reference is a list of publications with links. So if you want to know more about certain subjects, you can go to this list of publications. Here also, this is very useful. You have the glossary with the key terminology to find in the course. You can access this glossary at any time during the course, so you can go and check if you're unsure about certain terms. You can do, for example, lesson 1 today and lesson 2 in a week. It doesn't matter. You can do it at your own pace. Here in the certification, you have a link to get your certificate. So you do a quick evaluation and you get your certificate. And here a link to evaluate the course and give us your feedback. This is, you take certification, of course, once you have finished the course. Here also you have a link to the part 2 of the course, which looks very similar to this. Thank you and happy learning. So this is how the course. Okay, so I'm happy to share that since its publication, the course has already reached over 2,230 registered learners and 1,405 successful learners received a certificate. And the certificate, you can put it on your LinkedIn or your CV. So that's a strong sign of both the demand for this kind of resources and also the commitment from learners around the world. If you haven't already done so, I invite you to take the course, get your certificate, and share it with your networks. Here you have the QR code. I'm also proud to share that this is one of the first courses of the e-learning of the FAO e-Learning Academy to include a built-in accessible feature. So it's designed to be usable by people with low vision, hearing impairments, and learning or cognitive disabilities. Finally, I want to express my gratitude to the FAO e-Learning Academy, whose technical support made this course possible. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for explaining the course to us. All of you who are with us, I hope that it's given you the appetite to really enter into that and to explore and to take and learn a little bit more about the right to food. So it is my great pleasure now to go to our esteemed panel of experts that we have with us today. Each of them bring a unique and valuable perspective to the issue of the right to food and to capacity development. Together, they reflect the diversity of actors that are essential together and alone to advancing the right to food. So we have with us today Emma Orejudo Prieto de los Pozos. She is Deputy Director of Ecological Transition, Water and the Fight Against Hunger, and the Office of the Corporation Fund for Water and Sanitation for the Directorate of Sectoral European and Multilateral Cooperation of the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation, also known as AICID. And thank you for that very long explanation of the title, but welcome to you, Emma. We also have Sarah Brand, who is the researcher and policy advisor at the German Institute for Human Rights. Sarah is also one of the co-original authors of this e-learning, and she worked alongside us in the Right to Food team, so a great colleague and friend to all of us too. Welcome, Sarah. And finally, to Glory Luong, PhD, an officer for access to and control over natural resources at FIAN International, which is a leading voice in civil society globally and at national level, advocating for the right to food and social justice worldwide. Glory, welcome and thank you for joining us. So to begin our conversation with our panelists, I will ask each of you the same question to bring out your unique perspectives on a shared challenge. And just to emphasize, I will be coming back to you for a second question. So if we can keep the responses to 3 to 4 minutes, that would be fantastic, given the time that we have left. So beginning with you, Emma, in your role as a donor, and given AICID's strong commitment to the right to food, why do you believe capacity development is essential to make the realization of the right to food a reality? Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Claire. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to me staying here in the presentation of the course. Well, answering your question, Claire, Spain has been supporting FAO's work on the right to food for many years since its beginning, and it is currently the main voluntary contributor to the right to food team at FAO. Spanish corporations' approach to the sector is based on the human right to food, and we are currently developing a new Spanish cooperation strategy for the right to food, Zero Angle, to advance achievements in this challenge. This reflects the importance of human rights-based approaches as a core aspect of Spanish development cooperation, as well as its commitment to promoting inclusion and gender transformative approaches. From this perspective, capacity development is central when it comes to realizing the right to food. We understand the right to adequate food not only as a fundamental human right, but also as a lever for equality, resilience, and social justice. And yet, as we heard today, for millions of people, this right is still not realized due to many different factors, from weak legal frameworks to limited institutional capacity or lack of awareness at the community level. This is exactly why capacity development matters. At ICID, we see capacity development as a comprehensive process. It is not only about transferring knowledge or offering training. It's about strengthening the entire ecosystem that enables rights to be fulfilled and protected. Let me share with you how we approach this in practice. First, we place a strong emphasis on institutional strengthening. Many of our government's programs include support to enhance the skills of public officials, strengthen policy frameworks, and build responsive institutions. Second, we prioritize human rights as a core dimension of good governance. Our capacity development efforts aim to ensure that rights like the right to food are not just formal commitments, but guiding principles for action. Third, we adopt a multifaceted and flexible approach. This means addressing capacity development through a variety of tools, from direct training and technical assistance to applied research and policy dialogues. Fourth, we actively support knowledge management. We believe that knowledge, when shared and applied effectively, can be transformative and strengthen local capacities and leadership. And finally, we rely on partnerships. We work with a broad range of actors because no single actor can achieve sustainable change alone. So for us, capacity development is the bridge between legal recognition of the right to food and real-world implementation. It equips government institutions with the necessary tools to respect, protect, and fulfill the right to food, and empowers people with the knowledge to claim and to understand their rights. The Right to Food Fundamentals e-learning course that we are launching today reflects this approach. It is practical, accessible, and adaptable. And it creates a space for reflection, learning, and action across different stakeholders. This is why ICID is very proud to have supported the Right to Food team at FAO and their development of this course, and why we will continue to invest in capacity development as a cornerstone of our cooperation efforts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emma. That was a great perspective on the role of donors in developing long-term capacity. Thank you so much. So Sarah, let's turn to you. In your capacity as a human rights expert and as one of the authors of this e-learning course, how do you view the importance of capacity development for realizing the right to food? Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Claire. And first of all, let me congratulate all of you on launching this course, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure. So for me, the main goal of this course and the relevance of capacity development on the right to food in general is really to highlight the legal entitlements and obligations that come with the right to food. So to help all actors, duty bearers, rights holders, but also other stakeholders to understand that they each have distinct roles to play in realizing the right to food. In my experience in working with governments and UN institutions, unfortunately, a rights-based perspective is often still very much absent from the discourse on improving food security and nutrition. And instead, it's often framed in terms of moral obligations or economic development. And even many non-governmental organizations rely more on the idea of charity than on universal human rights. So I find it really important to say, wait a minute, this is about human beings and it's about their legal entitlements to be free from hunger and have access to a healthy diet. And governments, as duty bearers, have an obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill that right. And of course, the conversation with rights holders is also, it's equally important. In my current job at the National Human Rights Institution of Germany, we also look at the state of the right to food in our own country. So one of the things that I do is that I talk to ordinary people. And for some of them, for various reasons, it's really, really difficult to afford a healthy diet for themselves and their families. And remember, this is Germany, one of the richest countries in the world. And unfortunately, this is something that we see in many parts of the global north, that poverty and food insecurity is rising. And for those people, it was almost eye-opening to hear that what they are asking for, namely to be able to feed themselves in dignity, is not some audacious request, but it's actually their very human right. So to me, it's really important to have conversations like these, and such conversations show me that it's crucial that we keep talking and educating about the right to food so that we can all collectively advance its realization. I'm looking at my timer. I think I'll stop here and maybe save some for the second question. Over to you.
Great.
Thank you, Claire.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Really important reminders there of this fundamental right and how misunderstood it frequently is. So thank you, Sarah. And over to you, Glory. From your perspective, your very esteemed experience, both in research and in capacity building as FIAN and as an academic, considering your long-standing experience in empowering communities and building rights-based movements, why is capacity so important from the civil society point of view for the right to food? Over to you, Glory. Thank you. You're on mute still. You're on mute. Let me see if somebody can unmute you from the technical. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you so much, Anne, and the entire team that put together this e-learning tool, which I find very interesting when I run through it. I really, really appreciate how it flows and how easy it is to come, how easy the knowledge is handy. And my contribution would be that capacity building, more than raising awareness, knowledge sharing, and co-creation, is most importantly about enabling action. So from our experience working with communities on the ground and the rest, we realize that some right holders have heard about the right to food, but they often miss how do we go about claiming these rights? How do we hold duty bearers accountable? How do we connect local violations to national and international legal frameworks? So in my view, this is where tailored capacity development becomes essential. From FIAN's experience, sustainable change happens when right holders are equipped to engage in human rights advocacy. So I use a few examples of how we've done capacity building and what have been the outcomes. We've done with communities and our sections in the global south and in the global north. We've developed tools like the cooking pot, which is a metaphor for the conditions needed to realize the right to food. This tool provides a step-by-step methodology for co-creating a feminist, community-driven right to food and nutrition agenda. Another tool that we use is the People's Monitoring Tool, which we have also developed with the Global Network for the Right to Food and Nutrition. This tool helps communities to assess if states are fulfilling their obligations, if they are able to gain if the local institutions have processes in place that they are able to claim these rights. The tool also provides support for legal analysis and documentation of violations, and it provides a basis for advocacy recommendations that communities can use. We also offer a right to food curriculum tailored particularly to the African context that has been developed with African experts and our sections. And this is mainly for mid-career professionals working in the development field to be able to use a human rights-based approach in their work in humanitarian context, in development work. We have had these experiences. And then we've also had a case documentation guideline with targeted questions to explore violations, manage risk, and guide strategy. So beyond the local and national level, FIAN also supports communities and national organizations in preparing, for example, reports to the CSCRO report committee, the CEDAW, contributing to thematic reports like that of the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, and engaging with new working groups like that on the right of peasants and other people working in rural area. So what is the bottom line in my perspective and in our experience is that these tools and methods, like the e-learning course that we are here today to launch, are not only educational, they are empowering. They help communities to translate legal frameworks into living tools for demanding justice, dignity, and the fulfillment of the right to food. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you so much, Glory. Your points really underline how transformative it can be when rights holders themselves are informed, organized, and empowered, and thus able to really get involved in actions that can transform and change or make important, effective change. So let's dig a little deeper with our panelists, if you will allow. So Emma, we're going to ask, how can international organizations, national human rights institutions, donor agencies, and civil society collaborate more effectively in building capacity development initiatives? Over to you, Emma.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I mentioned it before, the right to food cannot be advanced by one actor alone. So at ICID, we firmly believe in creating alliances and partnerships. From our perspective, I believe we need to do something better. For example, listen more closely the needs for different stakeholders, because capacity development must be adjusted to specific demands and context. For example, the capacity development activities need to be sustainable in time. One-off projects are not enough. We need to support sustained efforts if we want to see a real change on the ground. That's why different actors need to have the adequate knowledge and tools. And that's why we at the ICID continue to strengthen global, regional, and national efforts for the progressive realization of the right to food for all. Foster space for joint action are needed. When international organizations, national human rights institutions, civil society organizations, and donors work together in the various stages of projects and initiatives, we see a long-lasting impact. The development of this right to food e-learning course is an example of collaborating among different actors and sectors, for example. Furthermore, it is designed to be inclusive and adaptable to different circumstances and needs. We need more of this kind of work, and ICID remains committed to support it. I will encourage all those interested in understanding the right to food and rights-based development to undertake this course. That's it.
Thank you so much, Emma, for those words. And I would just like to let everybody know that the panelists will stay with us so that you can ask questions later, but also to emphasize how fantastic ICID is as a supporter for the right to food. And we thank you very much. So Sarah, over to you now. I also want to thank everybody for your very concise answers. I really, really am grateful to you for that, because you, as I know, time is very short. So Sarah, again, you are one of the lead authors of this course. You work now in the German Institute for Human Rights, the National Human Rights Institution. What would you recommend to ensure this type of capacity development can be replicated and scaled up to reach wider audiences? Over to you, Sarah. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. So I think the idea of this course is really to have a thorough overview of what the human rights-based approach and the right to food are. And I mean, my former colleagues remember, and I think all of you can relate to how it is when you work on a project for a very long time and you involve more and more people, more and more content is being added. And actually when Anna, when you presented Paula, I had to, the virtual tour guide, I had to chuckle a little bit, because I feel like I spent so much time with this virtual character that she feels like an old friend or like a former colleague as well. And so I think the course turned out great. And of course, I encourage everyone who's interested in the right to food to take it. But at the same time, I don't think everyone necessarily needs that kind of detail. Rather, I think the course can also serve as inspiration for more targeted and maybe more concise capacity development activities, depending on what is needed. And I think Glory also alluded to that, to have tailored capacity building activities. So something I think is really important is to use this course and combine it with learning material that is specific to the given context, be that a particular political or geographic context or a specific thematic context. So for example, if someone were to prepare a capacity development activity on the right to food in, let's say, their National Ministry for Agriculture, which I think should happen all around the world, Of course, they could simply recommend everyone to take the FAO course, and it's great. But I mean, they could also use the course as a basis for their own training activity, providing information on a specific situation in that country, maybe adding real-life encounters between rights holders and duty bearers in that particular country, which is, of course, something that an online course cannot fully deliver on. And then the FAO course can still be shared as further recommendation for everyone who wants to know more. And I think the same goes for UN institutions like FAO. When we wrote this course, one of our, let's say, dreams or long-term visions was that it would eventually become mandatory for everyone within FAO. And I still think it would be great to maybe have a shorter version of the course be part of the mandatory trainings in FAO. Of course, not everyone in the organization has to become a right to food expert, since they are all experts in their very own fields. But it is my opinion that everyone who works in the United Nations should have a basic understanding of human rights, which are in the end the very foundation of the United Nations, and of those particular human rights most relevant for the respective agency. And for FAO, that is the right to food. Over to you, Claire.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for re-emphasizing so much of what has gone before and what we really aim towards within the Right to Food team, within FAO, and also with all of the partner organizations. So it's been really fantastic to hear your recommendations as to how better to build on this course. Right, over to you, Glory. From you, I wanted to ask, because of FIAN's particular and your particular examples and experience working in the field, building capacity of local organizations and local people, if you could share with us, I know we don't have a lot of time, so very briefly, please, some successful examples and some of the challenges that FIAN has encountered in its capacity development work on the right to adequate food. Over to you, Gloria, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. I'll quickly share maybe 2 examples and some challenges we've had. And I would not cite the country here, but I'm happy to bilaterally exchange with participants if they're interested. We have had, for example, a successful experience in one case in one country where women in fishing communities were facing the military in fishing water bodies. So using experiential learning approaches with our cooking pot tool that I just mentioned a while ago, the women started by reflecting on being pushed out of the fishing zones, losing their livelihoods, facing food insecurity. And then through our cooking pot tool, we engage in capacity building in training. They learned how to do legal analysis, advocacy planning, then they gained confidence and presented their case at the parliamentary committee that is in charge of food and food security in their country. In the process, for their advocacy demands, they demanded the demilitarization and the protection of their right to food. And what was the result? There was public recognition for their claim, and authorities began acknowledging their duties. And to some extent, the militarization of this water body has been reduced, or like there is like some reduction, some degree of reduction. And these were women before would not have even been able to talk about what is the right to food or what is their right and the rest. But through this cooking pot tool, this is one of the examples. And then another example that I would give from our recent work in Malawi, where women working in agriculture also face the double burden of care. So we facilitated learning spaces linking their lived realities to the right to food, legal analysis and understandings, and using our curriculum, which is tailor-made for African mid-career civil society organizations and community-based organizations, together with the cooking pot, they were able to gradually begin building community dialogues, mobilize locally, and then they started engaging with authorities. And one of the concrete outcomes is the plan to begin advocating for key aspects of the right to food that they were not even aware that, yeah, these are rights that they are entitled to and they can claim it and all of those. And yeah, they are focusing also on social protection, particularly they have a cash grant program that has some gender biases, and through our analysis, they learned that they could make some advocacy demands from the authorities. Now, in terms of challenges, there are not a shortage of challenges that I can share with colleagues who would go on to do this in the field. We have structural barriers, weak and repressive political context, which makes right advocacy after the capacity development has been done, and then right holders want to use this for right advocacy. There is a risk in such oppressive political context. And then we also have resource constraint. My co-panelists mentioned about the need for continued support, because one-off workshops are not enough to engage in the actions that I'm just talking about here. We need sustained capacity development to be able to get the action and the result that we are talking about. And I believe that the e-learning course is one of the tools, but there's probably more support needed to continue in the same light. So I would say there is need for long-term investments if we have donors who are interested in this. And then we also have the situation of uneven power dynamics. In many communities, we know that women, most especially, are excluded from decision-making spaces. So building capacity is just one part of the solution. No, we will have to further engage in creating spaces and protecting these spaces to ensure that women and other marginalized communities are able to have their voices and their demands truly heard and respected. So this is like, in a quick nutshell, what I can say about the challenges, but we can exchange further. Thank you so much, Claire.
Brilliant. Thank you, Glory. Thank you for sticking to the time, and thank you for those amazing examples of the challenges and the successes. And it brings me on to I'm happy to announce that the Right to Food team will be starting work in Malawi, so we can build on those kinds of initiatives under a German-funded project that we'll be developing in Malawi, in Indonesia, and in Guatemala. So very happy to hear from you with those examples. Thank you so much. Also want to thank all of you on the panel for your vital contributions, reinforcing the importance of human rights-based learning for development, and especially as it relates to progressively realizing the right to adequate food for all people. And now I'm happy to be able to open the floor to any questions. We have about 8 minutes, perhaps, so we can take some questions. I'm happy to say we have with us all of our panelists, and Tess is still here, Anna's still here. So if anybody has a question, please keep them short. And if you're directing a question to a specific panelist, let us know. You can raise your hand or put the question in the Q&A box. So we have a few colleagues from our team here. So if anybody has their hand raised or sees a question, please let me know, and we can then hand it over. So I think there's one in the Q&A box. Okay, so this question is being answered online in relation to support for organizations, but I would recommend anybody looking for ideas about what to do, where to disseminate. Thean's website's really good. Look at the IECID website, look at the OHCHR website, look at the FAO website, the Right to Food team website. So you can find out, and also it's worth it in your own countries to look at the website of these particular institutions to see if there's anything happening that perhaps you could get involved in. Any questions at all from anybody? Any hands raised? Not yet. Not yet.
There is one hand raised, Claire.
Anna, tell us, what's the...
No.
Oh, so can we hand the floor to the person whose hand is raised? If you could say your name, and I don't know if we can give the floor, can we, through the technical? Can we offer the mic? Hello. Hi.
Yes,
can you give us your question? Tell us to whom it's directed. Thanks.
Okay. Mine is not necessarily a question. It's just a little contribution I want to make. I don't know if that's accepted and allowed.
Sure. We can't see you, I'm afraid, but go ahead, as long as it's short, because we have very little time. But thank you for your contribution. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Kingsley. I'm speaking from the United Kingdom, and my background is in agricultural economics and food security. I want to say that I believe this program and e-learning is in the right direction because there's a major problem in the world's food system. There's a lot of imbalance. And I believe that helping spread this knowledge and educate people will equip people with the right knowledge to be able to contribute their experience to fight this cause. My only contribution is that I hope maybe in the subsequent episodes, we are able to involve some of the financial institutions and food agri companies, because I believe that they hold a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of power when it comes to the world food system, and their participation and involvement can help us make a lot more progress. Thank you very much. I'm most grateful.
Thank you so much. You said your only contribution. I have to say that's a massive contribution, your statement. So thank you so much for joining us, for making that statement. And to let you know, we absolutely agree with you. We hope very much that this kind of a tool can be of use to all sorts of institutions, private and public. And you'll probably be aware that the UN Food Systems Summit +4 stock taking moment is coming up in Ethiopia, I think in July, and therefore that also is an opportunity for the right to food to be on the agenda, and human rights ensure being or cross-cutting across all of that event and activities in the reporting. So thank you very much for your contribution. Are there any other questions or questions at all, or statements from anybody else? You've got a couple of minutes and then I will hand over. So I think that there is something in the chat. Can anybody, if it hasn't been answered, okay, I think they're all being answered. Perhaps this one about the funding cuts. So is there any, what in the current context, what can we really do? It's hard for us, Gwendolyn, thank you for the question. It's very hard for us to be able to answer specifically in relation to advice on reducing the funding cuts for life-saving programs, of course, but in the general context of funding for rights-based work, we would obviously see it as extremely essential to ensuring as that not only building the capacity of everybody, but also ensuring better implementation of programs in line with people's international human rights and also the international obligations of states. I don't know if anybody else wishes to contribute with a response.
Yeah, maybe if I may, Claire, just something that I could like to add. I'm sorry because I'm jumping before I will do the closer remarks. But I guess the fact that there is this funding cuts actually add a further reason why promoting the right to food and building capacity, building the right to food is even more important, because less resources means also more exposure to human rights violations. And also because there is a whole element of third-party obligations, meaning when countries cannot by themselves really afford ensuring the right to food for their people, third countries that can do that should, according to international law, lend a hand and do that. So I think that indeed, in this context of reduction, shrinking support for food security, nutrition programs worldwide, that's a further reason to promote the right to food. Over.
Thanks so much, Juan, for that answer. I've been told we have one other person with a hand up, and I think it is Dr. Woda Jago, apologies for my pronunciation, but please take the floor if you are still with your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. Is my voice clear?
Yes, very loud and clear. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Wada Jeremiah. I'm a member of East African Legislative Assembly, and it's an honor for me always to participate online in such conversation, especially when it comes to food security and nutrition and the right to food, because I'm the Secretary General for the Eastern African Parliamentary Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition. And when it comes to the advocacy for the right to food, I think it is like for us, we know that it's one of the basic human rights. But those who are concerned, as said by Madame Gloria, and I appreciate what she said, that most of these people who are hungry or have food insufficiency, they don't know that that's their right. They think, okay, maybe I'm not doing well. Maybe I'm not earning well. Maybe it's because of economic situation of my country. It's why I'm not having enough food. But they don't have that. It's the right of the state upon them to offer them or to provide them adequate food, not even necessarily any type of feeding. So I think for me as a legislator, people representative and a member of parliament, I really would have loved this information to be really outspoken there, and that, when the people are empowered, that this is their right. Also, I think the state will pull their socks up and know that we have to do something about it. And even me, this plenary, when when the parliament opened, I'm planning to move a motion for the right to adequate food, which is known. But when you bringing in the parliament as a regional parliament like ours, and you make the MPs aware that that's one is a really fundamental right, and it's a right of it's obligation of the state to provide food to each and everyone. Even if I'm not earning, I'm supposed at least to have one meal which is dignified for as me as a human. So I think that one, if it comes as a resolution, it will be okay. I know that it will be passed by the parliament, but it's always when we bring a motion is to spot a light on something which is very important and can become a regional law also. Though every one of these states, I'm very sure they are signatory of this human rights charter. But sometimes and I appreciate what FAO is doing, because FAO is one of our strongest allies for this Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition. And we are working very hard to make the members of parliament know that it's their fundamental role to bring the agenda of food security and nutrition at the top of the agenda in the parliament. And also they make very sure that adequate budget has to be passed towards agriculture and food security. And that's one of the mandate of the parliamentarians. Thank you very much. I really appreciate, especially the e-learning. I will try to sign up for it and then be one of it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your contribution, and also thank you so much for the important work you do on the East African Legislative Assembly. That's essential. And Juan, our team leader, has written in the chat to say any support, we're happy to provide it. And we're very, very grateful for your words. So with that, I think we can move to the closure of this. As we near Juan's words, let me once again please thank our distinguished speakers today, Emma from IECID, Sarah from the German National Institute, Glory from FIAN International, Therese from the Office of the High Commission on Human Rights, and Anna, of course, from our very own team, who did everything to get this course out and ready. So I'd also like to thank all of you as an audience for participating. I'd like to thank our contributors for their words, the presence of everybody today, and we have over 110 people joining from all over. It really reaffirms the importance of our work together, collaboratively, to advance the right to food through knowledge, through dialogue, and through collaboration. So to close our session, I would like to invite Mr. Juan Echanove, who is the Right to Food team leader at FAO, to give the closing remarks. Thank you all for joining, and over to you, Juan.
Thank you very much, Claire. And I promise I will really be very brief because we are already over the hour. But just let me reiterate that as we are closing, that I really want to express my thanks to all the speakers, to the panelists, to the participants, right? Because we have here today how capacity development it's really so essential for realizing the right to food. And it's not only in terms of building the knowledge, but also in creating a space for participation and accountability. I think that's an important conclusion of today. And these words, participation and accountability, in fact, they are key elements embedded in the very definition of the right to food. So if I can just recap very, very briefly, Emma reminded us how donors play a crucial role in making this long-term investment in human rights. And Sarah has highlighted the importance of translating legal principles into practical tools. And I really like how Gloria spoke very, very powerfully about the role of civil society in bringing these rights to life, right? Let me say this really very clearly. These ideas remind us that the right to food is not just a technical issue. It's neither only a moral issue. It's about justice. It's about dignity. It's about voice. And of course, I really invite you all to take the course and share it widely and use it to foster change in your work, in your networks. Join the more than, I think by the latest account, 1,500 people who have already taken the course, despite the fact that we only are launching it officially, but it has been in our website for a couple of months. And already, as I said, 1,500 people took it. It's less than 4 hours. You learn a lot, truly a lot. And I believe you'll come away You will come away thinking differently, slightly differently about the very reasons probably behind your work, whether you are working in food security or in agriculture or in nutrition or food safety or something else. And by the end of the course, you may realize something very powerful, which is that what you do is not just technical work. You, all of you here today, are working on a human right. And you know, this e-learning is just one step. It's a meaningful step, but it's amongst many steps that we are undertaking. It's part of a broader series of learning tools and initiatives that the Right to Food team of FAO is developing. So please stay tuned by subscribing to our newsletter, by checking our website. I think it's in the, you can see that in the, we have put it there. And again, big thanks to the Spanish government. Big thanks also, you know, to the people in FAO that have been working so much on this. And, you know, at the end, when we empower people with knowledge, and that is the topic of our conversation today, when we empower people, when we, you know, they get better knowledge of their rights, we are not just brackets teaching, we are unlocking the possibility of freedom, unlocking the possibility of justice. So unlocking the possibility of real change. So we really look forward for continue this journey with all of you and enjoy your weekend.